Let's just skip the formalities, alright? Best Jeanist is probably alive, and that is good news. I really enjoyed what we saw in the very earlier parts of that chapter in the plane, where we see this character who's having like health issues, right? He's not back to perfect health. Who does that remind us of? Best Jeanist, who was supposedly killed by Hawks, but we didn't really know that. Hawks is a hero at the end of the day. He was no reason he would actually go so far as to kill Best Jeanist, and it looks like people like me, you know, everyone who thought he was alive, well, we were right. Now, I'm really curious as to what he's actually going to be doing when he does arrive, because compared to someone like Shigaraki, he's not exceptionally powerful, and he cannot stop Gigantomachia, so I'm really just wondering exactly if he has a particular role to play when he does arrive where he's supposed to, or if it's just sort of just arriving just to help out, you know. That's what I'm really curious about, because he is one of the top dogs in the series, which means that people are gonna have some expectations from a character like him, especially given the history of him being supposedly killed by Hawks and now he's appearing, probably, I mean, assuming it is him, of course, but I'm just going off by the fact that it is him at this point, because I cannot imagine anyone else that has the same health problems and just happens to be back in action, you know, because they're really doing some hard indications that this is the same character who was severely injured by All For One, right? I mean, because of the fact that he has an injury, which in then turn caused him to need a break from sort of hero work that he usually does, right? And now he's supposedly back. I mean, he was gonna be back like some time ago, but then Hawks happened, and you know, and I guess right now is his time to shine. Like now is when he's actually coming back. But I do really wonder, you know, is he going to have a particular role in this war, or is he just there to kind of help out, you know, save people? Because he's really good at saving people, that we know, given his quirk, you know. He can easily prevent certain things from happening in the wake of Gigantomachia, though he would never be able to defeat Gigantomachia, of course. That would be crazy talk. Now in town we see Ochaco, Froppy, a lot of other characters too, like side characters, background characters, whatever you want to call them, obviously helping out saving people, you know, because we see how Gigantomachia is just kind of like progressing through town, you know, at a really high speed, 100 kilometers an hour, which is obviously pretty damn fast when you think about it in the sense of evacuating people. Like he's coming at you at the speed of like a car, not a full speed car, but still kind of like a vehicle just traversing through town. That's the speed we're dealing with here, and people have to make sure that these people, the civilians, are not caught in his route. They have to really like make sure that people evacuate the right way, you know, not actually running away from him like in a parallel line, but more of a perpendicular line instead, to make sure that they cannot be caught in his destruction. So that's really cool, and seeing like Ochaco and Froppy like helping out in this obviously was really nice. I think that was quite a nice touch to the chapter, especially given what happened to Ochaco later. But even with Froppy, like I don't even like Froppy, like she's one of my least favorite characters in the whole series, and I thought she made a decent contribution to this chapter, so I really don't see the problem with having this segment. I mean, I think it just sort of adds to the whole theme of this arc, you know, a lot of destruction is happening, like just a small war going on, right? So to see people trying their best to make sure that people just make it out alive. Even Froppy was really getting close to getting crushed this chapter, and we see how Ochaco is really worried for a minute, but we then obviously see that, you know, she makes it. Now, I really want to switch to the villains now, because before Toga and Ochaco actually met, we see a part of the chapter where Toga, Spinner, you know, Mr. Compress, and all of the other villains are sort of just on Gigantomachia, obviously, and just sort of having a little chat, right? Like, obviously, we see Mr. Compress and Skeptic looking at the computer, you know, just looking at stuff going on in town, and they spot Ochaco and Froppy, and that obviously interests Toga a little bit. But what I really found interesting about this part of the chapter was actually Spinner and Toga's dialogue, because we see how Spinner is pretty concerned with Toga, given how she's so ready to just jump off and, you know, find Ochaco. Not because she doesn't want her to find Ochaco or anything, but just the way that, you know, they've just lost twice, and he feels as if Toga thinks that she's the only one that's sad about Twice's passing, which obviously isn't true, which Spinner then explains. Like, he explains that even them feel bad about Twice dying, not just her. But Toga is sort of in this state of mind where she doesn't really seem to think clearly. I mean, you could argue she never does, but especially now, because she's probably for the first time experiencing personal grief, and that is something that I really find interesting about her character, how this can actually change a lot with her character. She's killed a lot. She's never really experienced someone really close to her dying that she didn't want to die. I mean, there was that guy at her school, obviously, who seemed like she kind of liked him, but she wanted to suck his blood and sort of ended up probably killing him, you know, that sort of stuff. But this is different because she never really wanted to do that to Twice. Twice was just a family member, a really good friend, a BFF almost, right? And to see this expression and reaction on Toga, like how she's actually experiencing this loss, it's so different from anything we've seen in Toga before. A lot of people have been speculating, starting like previous chapter, that Toga might actually leave the League of Villains depending on the answer that Ochaco and Deku give her. And I'm really in the middle on this because I don't really know how that would work out. Like, I don't ever think she could ever join the hero side because of all of the crimes that she's done, but I do kind of feel like she could leave the League and just become her own thing, you know, not really being part of any sort of organization depending on how things turn out. But I know a lot of people do want her to just become sort of like an aid to the heroes, maybe not fighting side by side to them, but at least helping them out in some small way. Alright, last but not least, the Toga versus Ochaco encounter. Now this is probably something people expected to happen even after just reading last chapter, because we kinda knew Toga was gonna find Ochaco, right? But to see them encounter this quickly is kind of interesting, especially how it happened. Like, she's pretending to be someone else, getting Ochaco to kind of like chase her down into an alleyway, and then she turns into Toga herself and kind of like lures her into this abandoned house, right? Where she confronts Ochaco in the best way she can by sneaking up on her. Obviously, Ochaco doesn't really understand why Toga is doing this, but we do. We know that most importantly, she wants to ask a question. She wants to ask a really important question, a personal question. And being sort of a hero by heart, Ochaco is more instinctively just neglecting her and wanting to stop her over anything else, especially with all the people outside of one's rescuing, or needs rescuing, should we say. But I'm not so sure that's gonna happen because Ochaco likely cannot take down Toga on her own. Toga is really good at fighting. Even with the hand-to-hand combat that Ochaco has been receiving, I seriously do not think she has a chance against Toga, because Toga is fast. She is really good with the quirks she has, especially given that, you know, she can use other people's quirks, especially Ochaco's quirk. Now, so if she just takes a little bit of blood from Ochaco, she could give Ochaco a real run for her money. So I really want to see how this fight ends up, you know, assuming a fight actually starts, because it could just be that, you know, they're just gonna kind of brawl and sort of have like this discussion while they're at it, you know, and we'll see some sort of dialogue happening between the two, and maybe we'll get a conclusion as to what Toga wants or not. I guess it's really hard to say, right? That's just my speculation how this fight might happen. Like, I don't necessarily think Toga is going to even try to kill Ochaco because she wants this question answered so badly. But I don't really know how Ochaco is going to respond to that, because Ochaco, being a hero, she will try to stop Toga no matter what. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this review. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought about this chapter of My Hero Academia, chapter 288. And as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and remember, Toga is waifu, Toga is laifu.